guideline called BIM implementation plan, which was made according to ISO 19750, 19650, and then the application of the guidelines in new project and the revision of BIP according to experience. Latest step was to scale up the process to a global level and validate it and mandate the use in the company. It is really important to see how the active participation to IFC tunnel development is a key element that go through all the different steps, and it has furnished an added value that I will show you in the slides. So from the selection of the building, the BIM sector ambassadors, they were involved in this project, and the development of the BIP has been enriched from the experience of sharing with other companies the knowledge and trying to implement new features of IFC, especially for BIP guidance, and later the use of the platform to let's say to be used in service delivery for Salex projects has shown that workflows that has been made from starting from open standards were successful, and so next steps were internal validation. And here you can find all sectors involved in the development of IFC and in the development of BIP internally in geodata. From tunneling a structural department to modeling and graphic and infra, arriving to geology and geotechnics systems and construction management sector, all single disciplines were analyzed in terms of possible use cases that could involve people from different sectors. And so for each of them, people from internal department were involved in the development both of the implementation plan and IFC group. It was really important to see how different sectors have been involved. Let's say from geometry, so the experience in commercial mechanized tunneling were really useful to define requirements from a geometrical perspective that could be added to in IFC tunnel, and most important features of it. To geology and geotechnics, where we work a lot to see how IFC mapping or main process related to geology and geotechnics, how it can be developed, because it was one of the main goal of the development of the new standard, because all these aspects are really fundamental in this kind of infrastructure. If we compare it with other type of it, geology and geotechnics is really part of tunnel. It's a really important part. It's not, let's say, it can be considered part of the infrastructure itself. And so how to clarify the link between field data interpretation design, avoiding loss of information, was really key aspect of the development of these new features in IFC. Deep analysis of different type of excavation, support, lining, has been developed in order to have a current taxonomy in future IFC, and defining specific requirements for tunneling works. And the same thing for tunnel system, especially ventilation, tunnel ventilation, fire protection, really peculiar, this type of infrastructure. So this key element has been really important to developing an implementation plan that was integrated according to the ISO 19650, and it has a recommendation about its application to tunnel industry that was created with the fundamental key role of geodata itself. And so the result is an integrated engineering and construction management platform to support the digital delivery of the project. It's really was really important development of BSIs to consider how all sectors has feedback and how this requirement should be part of the guidelines. A really important issue was to define common data, how common data environment should be structured, and was really important to analyze the workflow through analysis of done during the IFC tunnel working group, because they involve different software, different procedure, and so through this experience we understand where IFC tunnel will fill the gap in the future, that now it is there, and for all the, let's say, secondary aspects, how internally the workflow should be structured, maybe with other strategies, till open standard will not be present, because as you can understand also, the IFC tunnel will not cover all the single aspect that could be present in the tunnel industry, but the most important of it. And another key issue was to define the project and design management framework with through the different phases of the project: initiating, planning, do, check, and close. And we think that it's really important to use the work of the group of different IFC, for example, group, to be used as a checklist to understand the data information requirements. So IFC tunnel was really important to define all the different use cases that we actually use, and how they would be integrated in the main delivery. And the interface management, it's another key issue that is addressed by open standards, and it's fundamental to say how data will be exchanged in common data environment, how IFC can be used in the workflows, also with other companies, defining let's say the data information process and requirement, and so how information exchange could be hosted by open standard. And then a later aspect was to pass from say, all these guidelines that we've defined to the project. And so the BIM implementation plan, the requirement analysis report of 5C tunnel were later included in the BIM execution plan of a single project. And in the operational phase, to a digital production manual that specify the specific requirements and the modeling criteria we use in a single project. Current steps is to, after the use in several projects, is to get the feedback of all different offices of Geodata around the world, and to apply those framework in other, say, project in the other part of the world, and not only in Europe, and to validate the process and also the template we develop and mandate their use. So in conclusion, for a company that has tunneling as a core business, the list of the use cases, including the IFC tunnel requirement analysis report, we found that could be the center of workflows and data exchange scenarios. And it is also really important tool, the requirement report analysis of an open standard, because it could be used as a list, as a checklist to analyze the requirements of single project, and from this understand how different disciplines are involved in the workflow, use cases, what use cases can be easily managed with open standards, and which it's more used, it's let's say would be less easy to be directly used, and so different strategies should be applied. And it is really useful also to plan the interface with other companies, develop some matrices in which all these aspects will help a BIM manager and project manager to better manage the projects. So finally, in a few words, we are more and more convinced that Open Standard is really centric in BIM implementation, not only say in the development of a project, but also in the implementation in a company, within the company, of the whole, of the whole process of digital transformation that will lead the company to a new completely digital delivery and data exchange process. Thank you to everyone, and we hope to see you in Lyon for the Congress. Bye bye. Hello everyone, I'm Gabriele Brino and I'm recording.
Vous pouvez couper le... Okay, thank you. So I've received an email from Gabriele Brino, who was talking, and he writes that he's not able to connect to a question and answer session due to health issues. So I'm sorry, there is no way we can answer to questions. I hope, Karin, you don't have too many questions?
No, I'm just so glad to see this company who is so closely involved in the IFC tunnel development. We are also involved in this, the Swedish Transport Administration. We're leading a working group there as well. So this is really positive and good development from a company that we collaborate with, which is good.
Okay, rather positive then.
There are no, yes, and there are no questions in Brella, so.
Okay, it helps. Okay, shall we go to the next session? So we have Paulus Eckhardt from Netherlands, Director Digital, the Volker Vessels Infra, with a French accent, I'm sorry about that. And I'll leave you the microphone.
Bonjour, welcome. So, if we see, okay. I will introduce myself shortly in the next slides. The presentation is not about a new standard, but it's more about a guideline we created in the Netherlands how to exchange information. And we are now part of the BIM Loket. We have Building Smart Benelux in the Netherlands, but there's also a BIM Loket, and BIM Loket is one of the institutes who is busy with promoting adoption and knowledge and culture around BIM and open standards. And there's also maintaining, developing and promoting a range of open standards. And IFC is, for example, a standard which they are not operating because Building Smart is doing it, but there is close connection. So this guideline, we brought it under this BIM Loket. And my current role is I'm working for a big contractor in the Netherlands, 6.4 billion turnover, and my responsibility is to be leader of the digital in the infrastructure division. It's about 22% of the turnover. And Volker Wessels is a contractor who's doing everything from projects to asset management and yeah, full range contractor and infra. It's rail, it's roads, it's bridges, and it's also technical installations. Probably you never heard of it because the philosophy, the strategy is think global and act local. So all the companies who are working for Volker Wessels have their own label. And it's not always called Volker Wessels. So Van de Ven Bouw en Ontwikkeling Tilburg is part of the Volker Wessels as well. Okay, but now back to where it's really happening well. So what's happening in the infra 3D modeling world in the Netherlands? We have all this software, and everybody's talking about this during this conference, about all the software and where we have to exchange information in between. There's not one single software which everyone is using that makes life that easy. It's a chaos in file names. You know, everybody is using different file names. And then if I look to my back as a chairman of this guideline, I represent really the 3D modelings, the 3D modelers in the Netherlands. You know, they say, you know, it's unbelievable how much files I get and that I don't know in the file name what it is about. You know, it's a chaos. And of course, there are projects that are working very good, but in general, this is happening. Even still, this sometimes goes wrong. We exchange models, but then we don't use the right coordinate points, and it doesn't fit together. It looks very basic, but I'll come back to it later, but it still goes wrong. Metadata and properties, now this is really worse than the file names, because if you want to add information to a model and you don't use a proper classification or you don't make agreements on what information, where do I store what information, then it's hard to exchange models. We want to exchange models, but yeah. So there was some answer. We said, okay, we made these guidelines to improve this. And why? This is more parallel to how teachers are learning school children new rules and learning things. And the parallel is that if we want to create, evaluate, analyze, let's say 4D, 5D, digital twin, all the things we are hearing these days, what we want to do, we first have to create basic rules that everybody remember, everybody understands, and everybody applies. And this is about the quality of the 3D models. Because if the quality of the 3D models is bad, and that's what I saw, then you don't build a digital twin that easy. You can't do 4D, 5D that easy. So we created this BIM-based infra, the 1.0 version. It's a breakthrough, it's a change. It was 15 November of 2019, where I collected the best BIM coordination, BIM information manager of the contractors in the Netherlands. We put them together and we were discussing, and we created these guidelines, and it are big companies for the Netherlands, big contractors who are involved and who were part of making this new standard. And this is of course what we don't want, because that is what we see. We see every project, we make a new BIM execution plan, we make new rules together, and we're inventing the wheel all the time. And yeah, I'm a BIM guy, I'm a believer, that's what I hate. I hate to invent the wheel all the time. So that's what we did. And we didn't invent it as well, because luckily we had colleagues from our buildings and houses in the Netherlands. They already created this 2 pages of basic guidelines about how to exchange information, and they even adopted IFC already in the buildings, which is pretty standard in the Netherlands for buildings to use IFC. And we said, okay, let's do that for infra as well. So we created 2 pages, that's it. That's why it's called BIM base infra. It's only basic, 2 pages where there are these guidelines, there are requirements which you should use if you build a model. So I will shortly introduce you this 2 pages. First, the why, how, what. It's important. You have to tell, especially in the Netherlands, we are such a free country that you have to explain always why, otherwise people are not going to do it. It's not like the boss saying we are going right and everybody's saying, no, maybe left is better. So why? Yeah, we hate wasteful tasks, and we hate bad quality of models, because if we have a bad quality of models, then we have all this failure cost, and we do a lot of extra additional tasks, and that's what we want to banish. So how are we going to exchange? In the Netherlands, IFC in the infra is not the standard yet. Hopefully 4.3 will improve a lot, but we transfer native files. That's common practice in the Netherlands. We transfer native files between software packages, software applications. So we said, okay, create at least, every project you do, create a matrix where you put your software applications together and say which format are you going to use to exchange. And we gave an example, and this is a lot of work because we have to update it every half a year. We update this, and then, and hopefully in the future this will be IFC, and everybody is crystal clear that IFC, but this is not common practice yet. So this is what we did, and now we say, at least make sure every project you do this, and try to pick this one, because this is already by specialists, they looked at it, and they think this is common practice, best practice, so please use it. But if you want to change things because you have good reasons, okay, change it in the metrics. Then we made this guideline about the structure of the file name. We said, okay, you know, make sure you're always a uniform and consistent file name, because everybody gets happy of it. We said, okay, please, we advise to separate with an underscore. That's the last one. But at least the project and the area name as an abbreviation, optional ingredients we said something about, and we think, okay, if everybody uses this guideline to name his file, then life gets more easy, because we understand when we get a model, we understand what is this model about. Units, yeah, it looks very easy, meters or millimeters, but it still goes wrong. Somebody who's building a bridge thinks in millimeters, a road guy thinks in meters. So every project, at least, make an appointment about what is the units you transfer your information. So if you transfer information from one party to another, from engineering to contractor to supplier, make agreements on millimeters or meters. Coordinate system. Yeah, in the Netherlands we use the Rijksdriehoekmeting. And especially when projects are cross-border, this is always interesting, because one country is using another system than the other country. That's important for X and I, but also for Z, the height. It's important that we use NAP, New Amsterdam, PAL. And if we don't use it, at least make an agreement in a reference point where you link your height. And this reference points, that should be in the models, and use this symbol for it. If everybody uses it, you get all these models from all this party, everybody is using the same reference point symbol, and then it fits together and it's easy. So we said, don't invent it again, because everybody, every specialist, every 3D model now My reference point is the best reference point. I make a little round and I make a little square and I do like this. We said, use this one. This is agreed with the specialist from the contractors. They say, we believe in it, and hopefully others as well. Then, of course, the metadata. We really would like consistently structured models. So crystal clear that a pillar X2 is called a pillar X2 in every model. And don't change the name every time, because then it's hard to compare again. And what's really important, and this is the hardest guideline of the requirement we said use a classification, make agreements on a classification which you use for naming your models. And today we had some stories about it, object type libraries. I saw a presentation about, this is about object breakdown structure. An object breakdown structure based on a classification system. In the Netherlands we use NOSFB, NLCS or ETIM. That's also a problem. We don't have one classification system for infra, of course. No, okay, maybe IFC will improve that as well. But at least make agreement on this. And this is also very important. But if we want to do 4D, 5D, digital twin, this is the basis. Because this is in the design phase, we start with the models. If we already use the proper classification, everybody is using, asset management understand it, we can flow the information to the total life cycle of a project. And put this coding in the metadata. Then in infra, it's always like, you know, we have an existing situation, we have a plan for a new situation. That's why we create a temporary situation. We demolish things, we expire current assets, and there is always a revision at the end of the project. So it's also important, tell at the object if it's new, if it's existing, if it's temporary. The one big challenge in Europe is all the old civil structures in the Netherlands, but also in other countries. We have to replace them. They were all built in the 60s and 70s. So sometimes we replace them fully, but otherwise we reuse them, also from circularity thought, sustainability. So if you make a model, it has to be crystal clear. What is the current bridge and what is the new bridge? What is the enlargement of the widening of the bridge? So. And this will help also, you know, we didn't make that much requirements, but we say if you want to visualize, it really helps that you classify with the right material. Because if you make a visualization, then asphalt looks asphalt. And then concrete looks concrete. So what we see sometimes is that we put these models together in, for example, infra, it's from Autodesk, where we make really simple virtual reality model. And then, you know, when people doesn't classify the right material, their model looks really bad. So we make them together and then we try to make a competition and everybody starts improving the quality of its model. So it looks really nice in the total model. In InfraWorks it is. So, but we said, do it already in the basic on the right way. And this is a special one because, if you talk about civil structures, you have casting components and you have to make crystal clear that it's a casting component and avoid duplicates and intersections because that also makes life not easy. So this is, and this is it. These are 10 basic guidelines, 10 rules where we are really convinced that everybody is using these guidelines, or at least use it as a company or as a project. We rather have companies because we don't have to invent the wheel every time again in a project. So we launched it it was summer 2021. It was all digitally launched, of course, by COVID. 2020 it was. And in January 2022, we now have 99 partners. So we put it on the internet and we said, okay, leave your company name, your logo, leave your key point of contact, and please adopt this. And if you adopt this, we hopefully, as a company, you say, every time we model, we use this basic guideline to create our models. And there are big partners in it. And it's not only contractors. We have Schiphol, airport, very important that they adapted. Big asset manager. But Port of Rotterdam, important. Rijkswaterstaat, National Road Authority. Also big engineering companies like Sweco or Arcadis. And also important for me as well that the new people who learn the schools, the new people who learn modeling during their civil engineering study, they already are adapted, or they are already adopting this standard, you know, because they get it in their curriculum, they get it when they learn modeling, they know it. So we are waiting for the 100 partners, then we make a little celebration, we go with cake to the, and we have probably the province of North Brabant who will be the 100, and then we celebrate it. We are now fully integrated part of the BIM locket, so you can find it on the internet. There is a link, you can find these rules, and that also makes it more easy, because we are now on the table with all the standards in the Netherlands, all the classification standards, and we are on the table as well to talk about it. We made a more professional organization. Of course, this started with a few enthusiastic guys like me who were thinking, okay, let's make the world better. But that's not always working the whole time. So now we create a formal commission, which I'm leading, to the daily operations, let's say it, and we have a governance structure, we have an expert committee, so then at least we have enough power and we do it more professional. And in November we have a Spanish translation. So Building Smart Spain came to me and said, hey, this is good stuff. We want this for Spain as well. Can we make a Spanish translation? Of course. So together we made a Spanish translation.
My name is Rasmus Fuchs.
And here you see, of course, Spain instead of the Netherlands. And you see that Ibiza and the Canary Islands are part of Spain too. So you know, they are using this one as well. And they already created a Spanish add-on for IFC. Because we use the metrics in the Netherlands, and of course we want to use IFC, but yeah, companies are not ready for it yet. So I've contacted with Down Under now to get for an Australian version, or at least they were interested in the English version. And really up to date is, there's close contact with Switzerland about the Swiss translation, and that's interesting. We start in German, but if we do Switzerland, we have maybe a French and an Italian as well, so that really helps to spread the oil spot, we call it. What's happening more? Yeah, this IFC 4.3, we are in close contact, and Karin, our moderator today on distance, presented in April the current status of the IFC 4.3 and what's the process we are about. We had a digital meeting. There were probably 120 people listening to what is IFC, how does it work, the certification process. So Karin told us a lot about it, and we agreed with Ronald Bergs and Karin that after certification we will do some, yeah, let's see, colloquial review. I will mobilize the 3D modelers in the Netherlands to do a check on what's happening in with what the software vendors are doing, creating IFC, and does it work really the way we would like to? And of course we believe in it, but you know, believing and doing is two other things. So further alignment on the ISO 19650, because something about file names is also in this ISO standard, so probably we should align more with this. And the last one is we are trying to do a user case for a crossing, a viaduct, where we said to each other, okay, now we're going to create a 3D model which can fully flow to the entire life cycle, because we already think about in design phase what maintenance wants. So that's what we try to create now. And then we are talking with different standards, of course, because a maintenance guy X is using standard X and a designer is using another classification. We try to align it now and make sure that we can let flow a 3D model from design, and that we not throw it away, because normally what happens when we start in execution, we make it 2D again, create a drawing, then we start building it, we deliver the as-built drawings, we deliver it to the asset manager, and they put the information in the asset management system, and all the great information which we did in the design phase is lost. So we want an as-built 3D model which is classified the way the asset manager wants. This is it. So it would be a great success for me if somebody in the room or the conference wants a French translation, for example, then we can work on it, and we can spread the oil spots and make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Paulus, for this awesome presentation. What I feel is, unfortunately, that you had to invent a new standard because there was none. And do you think the next step would be to bring your internal locket standard towards CEN or ISO or anything?
I don't really care about certification or ISO. What I would like to have, and what I see happening with Spain, you know, BIM is also about people who believe in it and wants to implement it. So if we can create translations and at least try to keep as much as possible on this standard, everybody starts learning working with it. Yeah, and and at the end, if they say, okay, this is a good example to put in the standard, that is a great success. But on the other end, when there are translations in other languages, a Finnish version or a Swedish version, then I would be really happy already, because then we are improving the basic quality of the models.
Okay, so if I understand properly, there is, of course, a Dutch version, maybe a Flemish version, which is similar. There is Spanish, a German.
No, German not yet. They are listening to it, and I created it for the presentation in English.
Okay. I have a first question in the room, and Karine, you'll have the next one.
Thank you, thank you.
Hello, I'm Olivier Cuchet from Vinci Construction Grand Projet, working on some projects in the Netherlands. I have two questions. So the first one is it available in English?
I only have the presentation, so what I did is copy-paste it and then put a text box and put the English words, but we can create an English version. If there is a need, then I will address it and then probably take 1 month and we can create an English one. Yeah.
Because what I see that this is very interesting, because it's not really standardization, it's just good practice. And it's what we need actually for all the people working on project. I have one question about one topic which might be slightly difficult, is the question of codification.
Yeah.
Why do I raise that? And I was very interested when you showed the people who was signed or more, because you have owners here. And not this one, the latest one with all the people who agree on that. Yes, because here you have the Ministry of Infrastructure, the Schiphol Airport, and so on. And because what we are facing, working all over the world, is that each and every owner, customer,
has his own classification.
Wants his own classification system, and so on. And
I understand.
This is probably the most difficult part. Yeah.
So we didn't say use classification IRX. We said made an agreement on a classification and try to align with the classifications that are already there in the Netherlands, and that are the 3 ones I showed you. That's what we did, because it's too much now. It's not 2 A4s to create one classification. So, but at least we say think about this classification, and hopefully IFC is also something about taxonomy and use some kind of object type structure. But this is our biggest challenge. If we want to improve in Europe, we should make agreements on classification. Every country is doing it now for itself. And that's
and actually the one
a bridge in Finland.
The one you showed was in the British the codification system that
British,
you showed.
Standards.
It used to be. Yes, this one. It used to be in the English PAS 1192. It's not in the ISO 1969. It's in the British version of the. So it means that for now each country is still.
So this is interesting. We don't agree every country on classification, but a bridge in France is the same bridge in the Netherlands is the same bridge. It's a bridge, you know. And of course there are some specific requirements for every country, but a bridge is a bridge. And that if you look to the euro, look at all picture in the euro. There is on every euro billet, 5, 10, 20, there's a bridge, because bridge connects. So let's try to do this as well. But this is difficult, but the ambition for this document is only create better quality of 3D models. Let's first start, so that's why it's called base. It's really basic. But still here we have problems to do it. And then we create all these roles in BIM coordination guys. And you know what BIM coordination guys are doing the most of the time? Solving rubbish from others. Yeah, sorry.
Useless tasks you were saying in a previous slide, weren't you?
Sorry, 20, yeah. 20, slide 20?
No, I don't remember. You said useless tasks. Or,
yeah, banishing. Yeah, that's what we are doing. And you know, you are a professional. So you want to do your work on a professional way. And this is, if you look from lean philosophy, this is all red time. It doesn't add any worth, value to your process. So as a BIM coordinator, you want to do the right things. You want to do the clash detection. You want to solve problems. And you don't want to rename all these things. And that's what we learned each other. We say, stop. Quality should improve.
It's useless, but if you don't do it, it doesn't operate. Karine, do you have any questions?
No, I don't really have any questions. I think you've replied to anything that I was thinking about. I think Rasmus, who is next up here, and we need to also maybe take this basic BIM requirements into our organizations and see what we can do to maybe even make them Nordic. So
yeah, we start with a Swedish, Karin.
Well, I think we could handle the English and then we can make it common Nordic.
It's okay. Yeah, you understand I'm a salesman. I like the translations, but okay, thank you.
Yeah, but the English would be wise as the next step. Okay, thank you very much. Don't shut it down. Thank you. So if there is no more question, we shall go to the next step. I'm sorry, I lose my document. So the next presentation is recorded to. The object is a client-driven BIM collaboration and development across borders. There we have a question across borders. If you have habits in different countries, when we are crossing borders, it's difficult. So we have recorded speech from Denmark, Mr. Rasmus Fuglsang of the Nordic Road and Rail BIM collaboration. Vous êtes prêts?
I think Rasmus is muted. You need to unmute him.
Hello, my name is Rasmus Fuglsang. I'm from the Danish Road Directorate.
Sorry, I have a live presentation. If you rather want that, that was what I was trying to say. Muted.
I think they will be running the recording.
Yeah, I don't know why, but it was made half a year ago.
Hello, my name is Rasmus Fuglsang. I'm from the Danish Road Directorate. I'm here today representing the Nordic Road and Rail BIM collaboration. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this client-driven BIM collaboration and development across borders. The agenda, I'm gonna go through first of all the Nordic BIM countries, how we collaborate, and then take a look at the future perspective for our collaboration as well. First, I just want to go through the Nordic countries here. They are represented in the NBC collaboration by Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Finland. And if we take a look at the countries, we share culture and history together. We have related languages. Since 1952, it has been possible to travel between the countries without passports, just a normal documentation. And then, most important, of course, the Nordic Road and Rail BIM collaboration, which was formed in 2017, and that's what is the basis for this presentation here today. Just to take a look at the organizations in Norway, we have Statens Vegvesen. They are responsible for 10,600 kilometers of road. We have Nye Veje. They have 81 kilometers of road, but a lot of new investment projects, and they will that number will grow as well. Benenor has 4,200 kilometers of railway. If we take a look at Denmark, we have in the Danish Road Directorate, we have 3,900 kilometers of road. In Denmark, 3,500 kilometers of railway. The Swedish Transport Agency has a little less than 100,000 kilometers of road, 14,200 kilometers of railway, and the Finnish Transport Infrastructure Agency, 78,000 kilometers of road and 6,000 kilometers of railway. And of course, there's a lot of numbers here. That's the kilometers that each organization are responsible of. But if we put that together and take a look at it with a big potential, then we have a little less than 2,000 kilometers of road and 30,000 kilometers of railway that could be influenced by that. And that is also some of what this presentation is all about, and our collaboration for that matter, is that if we do things together, we have a greater potential and we can do things greater together. So in 2017, we formalized this way of working together. We have been talking about it since 2015, but we formalized this in a memorandum of understanding. And what we did is that we said, of course, what is BIM for us? The standard and model-based work process with information exchange are very important, and the project lifecycle and the information flow there is also quite important. We set up a mission and a vision that by sharing the way we're working, we can optimize our communication to the industry, and we can have awareness of ongoing activities between the countries. We have a vision that we can work with open standards and that we can reduce documentation, design and construction costs in the transportation sector. And of course, this life cycle management perspective, that is what we wrote down in the memorandum of understanding. And we have been working with that ever since. There are some adjustments, go through them here. First of all, we have been working a little bit more about the concept of BIM. What is BIM? How do we see it? So we created this Nordic BIM maturity model. It's based on work being done in Norway, Denmark and Finland. But we have joined it together into one model where we have 4 core elements. So when we ask ourselves what is BIM, is of course the contents in the model. How many information can we put in there and how can they work together? We have the digitalization of workflows. How can we do that smarter, digitalized, automation and machine readable data, for example? What is that? How can it be done interoperability between the information? How would the information flow? And then, of course, the collaboration within the project, how many people can use data and have it available for them to use. So that's the core elements that we have been working with. And then, of course, it is a maturity model. So we have this stepwise that we want to go through, and some of the thoughts behind this is that we have to move in all these points to do the steps in an efficient way. You can of course have a model with a lot of details, but if you can't exchange it open, then it will be difficult for you. But that's just to show you the 4 core elements. The model is here. We have on the left side the core elements, and we have the stepwise in the top, where we go to higher levels as we move on. In the bottom of the color background, this is BIM uses, which has been introduced both in Denmark and Finland. In Finland, they have done some project measurement out of it, and in Denmark, we have worked with creating a measurement of the uses to support this maturity model as well. But it gives us an idea of what BIM is in a more detailed way than was in the memorandum of understanding, and we want to use this to define our work further on as well. So if we look at the collaboration at this point, It's based on that we do discuss and share best practice, and we want to do it through work groups with representation from each work group, and they have to document where they want to go and how they want to work with a specific topic. So we can use that to coordinate between the working groups. And then we have a decision-making group, and of course, and we have the possibility as well to do research and development projects through this Northwood concept. At this point, we have a set of working groups active. The first one with the maturity model is completed, but we have the MMI LOD definitions, BIM classification, influence in international standardization, and a work group looking on how we can work together in the future in this NPC work as well. Each organization participate in the working groups with their own people and also define who should be in this decision group. So that's the foundation of our work, and I'll just try to go through some of the working groups so you will get an idea of what's going on here. First of all, the MMI LOX working group, it's combining the two approaches with the LOX, trying to look at the information and models, and the MMI scale, which looks on how models are being used in different places. So we've had a work trying to see, can we combine those two, and what makes sense for us to use them. The MMI scale is especially being used in Norway, and at least in Denmark we are looking at this LOX approach very closely, and the working group have concluded that it's not possible to combine the LOX and MMI because they are describing two different things. LOX is the requirements for the model, and the model maturity index is the process in how to achieve the requirements. So they can work together, but it's not, they can't be combined. So we need to analyze what's being done in SIN 4.2 and the level of information needed in each country to work further on. And we are quite interested in the work that is being done in Denmark right now in an organization called DECON, where they look at this LOX level, and that will be included in this work group's investigation further on. So a lot of interesting things going on here. In the working group for BIM classification for infrastructure, we have joined forces in creating this Nordic study for classification system for infrastructure and transportation. It's an example on how our collaboration is beneficial to do research and development here. It was a report, but it has found is the basis on how each country are working with this further on. In Denmark, we have a couple of projects that are using CCS, CCI classification, which is and that decision came from the among others, of course, but also based on this report, the findings here. In Finland, there are a proposal to update their current infra BIM model classification to fit with that, and also a master thesis in the comparison of classification system in the construction sector to see how that fit with the Finnish transport agency there. And in Norway, Nyvaya are looking at co-class to see how that works with their projects, and in Sweden also they are looking at co-class and also seen in an asset management perspective. So an example on how a joint research report, in this case, how it's being used in the countries further on. The international standardization, we see that that is quite important as well. It is the basis for all the work that we are doing. You have to have standardization at an international level to reach a high BIM level. That's clear to us, and that's what the maturity model says as well. So in this working group, we collect information and coordinate them about what's going on. We have the support for the IFC development. There has been a lot of good work being supported by the Nordic countries and coordinated through NBC. And we have also written a letter to the software vendors regarding implementation of IFC, where we again use this, as I started out with the different countries, the BIM potential. When we join forces, we have a much stronger voice in BIM development. So we have used that there as well. So recently in June, we had a workshop trying to see where we should work together. And of course, the implementation of IFC 3.0 is very important for us. That has to be in focus. And just to create a Nordic statement on standardization, that we support this. And we need to learn and share experiences and best practice between the countries as well. And then there are an interesting question in the ISO 19650, how to implement that. That is very important for all of the organizations as well. And if we look at some of the the work already being done out there, the Building Smart Data Dictionary is quite interesting for us as well to see how we can adapt that. And then the working group with the cooperation framework, which is also quite interesting because it forms and works with the way to form the future collaboration. The background for starting this is that we want to have the opportunity to do co-finance research and development. We saw with the classification report that it is possible and beneficial for us to work with. So we had to see how to work further on in doing this. We have, even though we know each other quite well in the countries, we started out with an open interview for all the organization with open questions, trying to ask them what their perspective of BIM was. By having it as an open guide, didn't dictate which answers they should give, but had it more openly for each organization to give their point of view to this. And it was actually quite beneficial. What we did was that the statements in the meetings, what was noticed, we tried to introduce key structure, some key structure elements to structure the interview findings and collect them so that we have them for further analysis. The interview was a 2-hour interview and a lot of interesting things were presented, but of course it was not everybody that could be in those 2 hours interview of each organization. So what we did was that we made a pitch talk and recorded that 20 minutes for each organization, trying to give the idea of what BIM is. And that gives a very good picture of the focus points in each organization, and everybody can view the recordings of that, so they get an idea of what is of interest at this moment in each organization. And this is also the basis for the analysis which are ongoing right now, and where we are trying to see on how we can work together most or the best way. So if we look at the structure I mentioned, we have seen 3 important elements to look at. First of all, the program approach, the MSP approach, where we see BIM as a set of activities that leads towards the same goal. We don't see that a collaboration like the NBC should solve all of the problems. but there are some places where we can support each other in this way of thinking as a program, with BIM as a program, trying to connect all the activities. So there are some key elements here that are quite important, and at least the program thought is good for us to have with us, so that we can be clear on what is being solved in NBC and what is being solved in each organization. There are also the ISO 19650 figure, which are shown here with the different layers. They are also quite important to understand how BIM are working. And then, of course, the BIM maturity model, the core elements that are introduced there. They are also very important in identify where we should work and identify where each organization are at this point. So we use that to structure the interview findings. But doing some analysis on this, the first analysis, we see some tendency, and we have put in here the Nordic Road and Rail BIM collaboration, and there are two different places where we can collaborate. First of all, trying to get a common Nordic BIM understanding that can be done together between the Nordic countries, having this generic BIM concept where we can measure ourselves, combine ourselves. We can have that discussion about the international standards, but we also see that each country has to do some work here. And the practical work are not being done in NBC. It is the infrastructure projects in each organization that generates this Nordic best practice. The information modeling and the information management has to be done in each country in respect for the demands and setup that each country is operating under. So the tendency here is that we can do something together, but we're also dependent on each country moving ahead and generating results. We can and will share information about that, trying to generate this Nordic best practice from the work being done in the countries. So if we look at a little summary here, the NBC clients, we have the opportunity to influence the demand for BIM in our procurements. We want to promote innovation to increase industry efficiency. That's also common for the countries. Each country has dedicated people working with BIM in each organization, these clients' organization. We also have that in common. We have the willingness to share information and cooperate between these countries and organizations as well. And then, as I mentioned a couple of times, when joining forces here, we will have a much greater network, BIM network, and a much greater volume, both to discuss internally and towards the Nordic market, but also in respect for this international standardization as well. And that is common for all of these Nordic client organizations here in the collaboration. So if we look at the further collaboration, we have to keep the national and organizational demands in mind. We can't solve everything in NBC. Innovation is going to be created through infrastructure projects where we are open for new solutions, but it's going on in each organization in their infrastructure projects. But we need a framework for connecting existing activities, and we need a framework to identify common areas of interest, also with the possibilities of doing research and development projects if two or more of the organizations have the same need for research. That's a possibility to do here between the countries. And that's what we are working on, documenting and reviewing the memorandum of understanding so that we can do that. But when we ask the different countries, they are all mentioning that they want to support this, and we are very glad for that, and we see a great future here. I want to thank you for listening to this presentation, There's a set of contact persons here from each organization. If you want to learn more, feel free to contact any of them. But thank you very much for the opportunity here to present that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vogelsang. If I pronounce it properly, sorry about that. I see blossoming initiative in different countries, which is very, very clever. We've seen Netherlands, Nordic countries, and others just present here. Okay, you were mentioning that at some step it would need to go further to international standardization or things like that. So, but it's always clever to have initiatives to have the first step forward. Any question in the room? We have Tarmo present in the room, who belongs to the names that were shown here. And Karin, do you have any question?
Well, we did have one question in Brella. It was from David Fürstenberg from Kofi. He was asking about the report, the classification report, and I put a link in Brella to it. Do you want to say anything about the report, Rasmus?
Well, it is investigating the classification systems and what perspective you should have to infrastructure classification. It is a couple of years old, but I think the decision in the NBC group at least is that we have to build on the experiences mentioned there. It's a good way of trying to understand the infrastructure classification approach and what you have to be aware of. But what we have seen and what the working groups also underline is that you really have to test it on the projects and get that going. And right now, as also mentioned in the presentation, there are several pilots going on using these classification systems. And it is the choice of the classification system is based on the report. So yeah, quite interesting.
But also it was written by Phil Jackson, who of course has been and is very active in the Building Smart Infra Room, and we also got it published on the Building Smart report repository. So I have a question. A few years ago, Peter Axelsson and Ingemar Löfven, they were standing on the stage of InfraBIM Open in Tampere saying, we are going to implement IFC for alignment in 6 months' time. That was very optimistic, but what do you think now? We have all been very active in the IFC 4.3 development, and what are the possibilities of accelerating the implementation in the Nordics, in your view?
Well, in 6 months, then we will have it implemented. Of course, we don't have to say that every time, but of course there are several things that has to be in order to do so. And we have the market has to have an ability to deliver information to us through the IFC format. So it has to be implemented in the software systems so that we can ask for them. Otherwise, it will be quite problematic for doing so. And of course, we as owners has a obligation to be aware of what information we want to receive, and that work is being done already now. So I would say we have been working on what a digital model looks like, what the content is. So we very welcome the open formats, and as soon as possible, I would say we will demand it, and they are of course following the implementation phase with great interest.
Yes, and let's say we are not afraid of requiring it in an early stage. The software vendors are committed. It's just a question of when it will be available. So there are already some pilots, I think, also. Yes?
I have a question from Mr. Jan Saar.
Hi, Rasmus. Yeah, it's Jan from Estonia. I was just wondering if there are is there room for some Estonian clients also in the group? We're speaking the same language as the Finns, so it's kind of we're there already. No.
Well, I think let's take that into the Nordic Client Group and take that question with us. I can't give you an answer here as I'm just representing the Danish Road Directorate. Of course, I'm representing the group, but as mentioned, we have this decision group in there, and we will gladly take the question with us.
I can also say that at the beginning of the Nordic BIM collaboration, we had a very close relationship to the Nordic BIM, the Building Smart BIM, what's it called? The Nordic Hub. Sorry, Tarmo, for not knowing this. We had very close collaboration with the Nordic Hub, and in the Nordic Hub, we have the Baltic countries represented. So, Jan, I think also a contact with them would be to see where they are in these thoughts, I think would be good.
Okay, thank you. If there's no more questions, I think we can say thank you for the three wise presentations we've had. Thank you, Karin, for animating together with I. And hopefully we can meet latest next January 2023 in Tampere.
Yes, let's say that.
Latest.
Aim for it.
Thank you. If there's nothing to be added, talk to you later.
Thank you.